Yeah, it is a Thursday.
It's a Thursday. It's February the 3rd, 2022. Welcome aboard, everybody. This is the Crushing Iron Podcast. We're episode 553.
Yep, 553. And
I'm gonna roll with that.
It is a Monday, but it's a Thursday, and I'm sure you wanted to talk about NFL football, and now we can't really do it because it's going to be old news.
Sure we can, but we still can. Listen, I saw a slight request for more Hayden's hot takes, so I'm thinking of opening up the show, every once a month or every Hayden's hot takes, and this is we're recording this on a Monday post Tom Brady retiring and post the NFL AFC and NFC championship games, and Hayden made a comment a couple casts ago about Tom Brady and wishes he was in our family. Now, it's apparent that Tom Brady listens to our podcast, or at least Giselle does, and he's retiring and wants to be part of our family.
Is that fact now? I heard it was not sure.
Yeah, who knows?
Well, by Thursday we may know.
I mean, it's in the news, so you can always say you're not sure.
Exactly. Brady's like, where'd that come from?
But it had a lot of questions. He was visibly upset that he was like, so what is he going to do? And I was like, he's gonna, he's not going to play anymore.
He's going to make billions off of crypto.
Exactly. Well, maybe, or cents. And he says, well, he has a couple of good questions. He said, you think he's going to play? Is he going to think about playing again? And I said, he'd probably think about playing again every single day. But he's probably not going to do that. And he said, his two hot takes were this. One, well, maybe he'll go back and play for the Carolina Panthers. He really wants the Panthers to go back to the playoffs. And I said, I don't think he's gonna go back and play for the Carolina Panthers. And then the hot take of the week was Hayden said, well, can you text him and ask him? I said, buddy, I don't have Tom Brady's cell phone number. He said, why not? And I said, well, we're not friends. Can you get it? And I was like, no, I don't. You got to know people that know people that know the people to have Tom Brady's phone number. And I said, I don't have his phone number, but you never know. He might listen to the podcast. And he says, he doesn't listen to the podcast. And I was like, thanks, buddy. And that's your Hayden hot take for today. He doesn't listen to the podcast. It's your first time tuning in. Welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. We know you have a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe, especially ones that don't open up their episodes with NFL games and hot takes from a 5-year-old. But we cover it all. We do swim, bike, and run specific podcast. We do race recaps. We do race previews. We have on the occasional guest, but for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through in life, what our athletes are going through. We work with a wide range of athletes, from beginner-level athletes who are just looking to complete their first sprint, all the way to elite-level amateurs trying to get back on the podium in Kona. And they're all over the world. We work with quite a few here in the state of Tennessee, but our athletes are from all over the globe. We'll be at Run Camp. When you're listening to this, we have 35 people coming, and I think only you and I are from the state of Tennessee that are coming to Run Camp. I think so, yeah. Everybody else is coming from all over, West Coast, Northeast, Canada, if they're allowed. So we work with a wide range, and we'll use the conversations we have with them, their training, the feedback that we give with them, texts and emails and phone calls to drive the topic of the day. Sometimes we'll also hop into our Facebook group, which is Crushing Iron Group. If you want to be a part of that awesome community and post away, because there's some great people in there that are more than willing to answer your question with limited sarcasm and provide you with more info on your triathlon journey. Just again, answer that simple question. We'll let you in. We'll go into there and do a Q&A session sometimes, at least probably once a month. We'll do that. But that's it. We don't do sponsors. And as you're probably thinking, who would want to sponsor you guys? Well, you know what? Some people are trying to find their way. We don't do ads either, but we do have an agenda that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Yeah, we do.
You may take it away?
No, I think, okay. I was going to say, I guess the club's over, club registration, but if you send me a email specifically.
It says, I listened to episode 533 and you said it was okay.
Well, it was, what do you call it? Like trying to get back into college kind of letter kind of thing.
Oh, dude, I used to do that. I did that a lot.
If you have some good reasoning.
That's right, yeah.
We'll run it by the board. And you never know.
Such a great analogy.
The club.
Yeah, I'd like to come back. Yeah, I'd like to come back.
Are you sure?
Are you sure? Last time you were here, you took 6 hours and then you dropped a class and you got a D. So are you sure you want to come back?
It's funny. I didn't even think of that, but I did get an email about that. Somebody's like, man, I just need to come back and be accountable and get things back together again. And and I think that's at the core of it.
Get the band
we go
back
up
together.
And down in this sport. And of course, I'm kind of in a down phase, but as you deciphered this morning by looking at my face.
Yeah, we know each other well. It's easy to see.
But I think that's a big point. It's like, you get kind of in this thing about we want to go crush a race or whatever like that, but the big picture is longevity. Kind of along the lines of what you were talking about maybe for a topic today with was it Michelle?
Michelle, an athlete. Yeah, talk about it is about longevity, and that, I mean, I think, and we do a lot of obviously various topics and life related and triathlon specific related. And our last one on Monday was in depth more about bike testing and stuff. But early in this topic for today, and the example I'm going to use, we could be, I'm going to string it out over 2 years, but you could easily kind of make the own analogy and kind of do the same kind of outline for your own year, because we all know the year is long, right? And I think a couple things that I think athletes lose sight of very frequently is how overrated sometimes seasons are, right? And how we look to basically accomplish things in one season, then we think about, we start over again, and then we do it again. And everything is connected, right? Everything is connected. Everything you do is connected. If you removed the months and the weeks, it'd just be days, right? And it would also remove the excuse of starting over on Monday, because you wouldn't have one. You'd have to get your shit together and get back to work. But when you have it's January, well, now it's February, and you're looking at your A race or your biggest race you've been thinking about for since September, October, November, December, whatever it is, man, that's a long way away. How do I structure my year to not just be in the best shape I can be then, mentally and physically and emotionally, but what do I do in the meantime, right? I don't want to get too burnt out, and I don't want to just make all right, I'm going to start, my 322 days to Ironman Florida, and because that's just it's a long time. It's kind of like the hesitation you get when your buddy calls and they're like, hey, dude, I popped the question, we're getting engaged, and you're kind of cringe because you're like, oh shit, he did it. And then you're like, oh man, when's the wedding day? He's like, well, we're probably not going to it'll be a long engagement. We're probably looking at early spring 2024. And your first thought is, you're not going to make it.
You think that's a bad idea?
I think it's a huge, I was like,
it's come out a few times.
It's like, you're not,
let's just get in and get out.
Just go. Exactly. And you're not going to make it. Okay. You're just not going to make it. And so that's true when you hear athletes solely focus on one of it. They get disinterested, they get burnout, and you can use, there's only a certain amount of fuel, right? You get for a race, internal fuel, external fuel. There's only so many, Ironman Wisconsin finisher videos on YouTube you can watch before that just kind of they leave you fired up and leave you real fired up, and you're kind of like, yeah, and then remember what happens, it's not fired up, and then you're like, shit, what am I going to watch? This does nothing for me. And I think you can't do that right in this early in the year. But the question I got over the weekend, which I think is something that I don't think we've even talked about it before, but it's an excellent question, is this athlete specifically that I working for 3 years, wants to go back to Ironman Coeur d'Alene, which won't be back on the calendar till 2023, and think about, or I think 2023, 2024, and think about, she was like, how do I focus, right, on a race that's on a big day and this is applicable for all kinds of athletes who are maybe just getting into the sport, and they want to do a full, but they don't know when they're going to be ready, right? And they want to know, how long is it going to take me to get there? It's going to be years. How do I stay engaged? How do I plan for something like that? How do I really, kind of map this out to where it's still top of mind, but it's not the one I'm obsessing about? Because frankly, when you want to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go for a run or a ride or a swim, that race 2 years from now ain't going to get you out of bed, right? No, it's going to have to be some kind of different motivation. So what I was kind of walking her through is listen, if you're training for that specific race, there's nothing wrong with wanting to get another Ironman out of the way before then, right? To kind of dust off some things, practice through things, go through training, because the training for a full is good, right? And especially if you're doing it at a right time of year. And so I said, if I'm you, and we're basically as one because I'm the coach, is this year we work on, and this athlete wants to work on mostly running. I said, what we do is we'll do a 70.3 focus, work on getting faster through the middle of this year to the end. We'll go right back into something which she's very passionate about, which is wanting to drop her marathon time. We'll go right back into marathon training, marathon training phase, and going long, because we just went through 70.3, which we've talked about a lot, that a lot of athletes have a whole lot of success coming off a 70.3 build and then going right into marathon training, because they've got kind of the fast, sharp speed, and then all we got to do is go long, and they're not overtrained with too much run volume. It's also a great time of year. no matter where you live, it's usually easier, softer, more, comfortable temps to run in when you look at October, November, December, January. And then if you want to do an early season full the next year, do it then, right? And that's also about knowing your schedule. Is January, February, March, April, like maybe Ironman Texas next year, still about a year off. Good to go through that cycle again. I think one of the things that and I was reminded of this with an athlete that was coming back from a non-injury related surgery, was like the extra stress that we have from a time management standpoint when we kind of get out of the groove of putting in 12 to 13 to 14 to 15 to 16 hour weeks. Like sometimes it's not the volume itself, it's the stress we put on ourselves to try to find the time to get it in. But once you kind of incrementally, go up, or kind of the analogy we use is like, if you can't make time for your 20-minute run, you ain't gonna make time for the 40, right? But if you bridge it up from 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, just 5 minutes a week to week, you'll be at 20 to 40 and no problem. And not only are you doing the extra volume, but you've already worked that time and set aside in your schedule. And so there is a certain amount of, I think, time management and like mental fatigue you go through when you have that kind of the daunting time and responsibility demand that it is for 70.3 in Ironman training. So I think it is good to go through that, not just from the general benefits of, a good timing in base phase, and then phase out through the rest of that year and hop back into marathon training and get ready for Coeur d'Alene. But I think everyone has their different Coeur d'Alene 2023 or 2024, wherever the date was. And I think it's a good exercise for athletes to do in thinking about looking at the sport from a longevity standpoint, right? Where do I want to be in 2 years? And I actually think that's the fun of it. Like we think the end of the season is a long time. Try to rethink things, right? Let's say, and this is a far, far reach for me and most of you, let's say I'm an Olympic athlete, right? And my Olympic cycle is every 4 years, right? How do you think they prioritize to get better, right? And know that basically I've got one day 4 years from now that I want to achieve. Yes, you're going to have the Olympic trials and, in tournaments or races and events before then. They're going to basically tell them they got the Olympic trials, obviously, but it's one day and one event, 4 years. Yes, they can have that driving factor to be an Olympian and have a gold medal, but what is going to get them out of the bed? And it's going to be things in the interim that lead them up to that specific day. It's not going to be that specific day.
Man, I can't imagine that.
Wake up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I woke you up.
No. Well, first of all, I can't imagine me personally scheduling an Ironman 2 years from now and how I would handle this next week or the next 2 weeks or whatever, because, and I think that, I'm not bragging about that. I think there's something in there that I need to figure out. And a lot of times I think it's kind of about really being passionate about learning or something like that. Like really maybe learning your body and learning what your weaknesses. I mean, because what else can there be really? If you're training for the Olympics, like you said, 4 years from now, I mean, you have to have like almost an obsession about shaving fractions of a second and getting to the place where that kind of thing can happen and figuring it out with your coach and working on probably the most mundane, crazily boring things but how do you make them exciting, right? And like you said earlier, I mean, it's getting trapped in the seasons and stuff like that. I heard the saying recently that millionaires look at the market, billionaires look at the stars, because the seasons, I always hear that these billionaires are all kind of caught up in the astrology of the world, the world clock. Mm-hmm. And, humans said, okay, January through December, and they just made it up along the way at some point.
Been saying that.
But the time of everything sometimes doesn't. I wonder about that sometimes, like if things aren't lining up in your life and you think they should be just because it's the new January or whatever, and maybe it's actually March or April. We'd kind of talk about that's a whole other issue, obviously. But how do you get passionate about the little things and the learning and just the whether it's, really dialing in your diet and your hydration and things and having fun with that. I mean, because that's a really interesting challenge for me.
Well,
because it's such a slow process. You can't really see the wins,
right? And
a lot of times.
Well, I mean, if you're thinking about the day itself as a win, right? But I think the athletes that I know I work with that are the most successful are the ones that are just that what they do, triathlon and training and getting better is a lifestyle, right? It's just what they do. And I think you have to kind of, you can't be too excited. You can't get too down. You have to just be kind of confident and content with knowing that every day is going to lead to this other day, right? The day down the road. But the more days you string together, the better chance you have of that day being the best you can be.
Absolutely.
And I think that's like in finding little things, like, I have athletes who really like to pick apart specific things or pick like very, very small things to get better at. Listen, there's so much we can all get better at, not just in life, but in triathlon specifically. Like, I think sometimes we are fooled when we look at time and seasons. Like when I had quite a few athletes test this last week that we talked about in the Mondays podcast, but it's like, I was kind of disappointed, that I didn't, wasn't what I had in like, September. I think we oftentimes, this is the same with I think everyone in age. It's like the way we look at time and the amount of fitness we assume we are going to keep and gain just because we've been in this sport longer and we are in the next season. I think a lot of athletes have this like blind and almost naive expectation to be better every year when the work doesn't match. And you could say, okay, so you just took, you just did anything. Like maybe you did a 5K and it's, February. If you just took off November, December to do not much of anything and then kind of got back going in January, what the hell were you expecting? Mm-hmm. Right? Versus the last time that you were doing it, you may have, done something in August, September, October, where you were in the best shape of your life, right? And then you did something and now you're comparing it to that. Training, fitness, testing, life also. It's like, it's very much about what have you done for me lately? It's not about, oh, well, I've been, bike training for last year and I really thought I was going to see this and see that. I'm like, well, the last 6 weeks, you ain't done shit. So what, just because you've done something for a long period of time, it's all about what have you done for me lately? It's kind of like, we've joked before, an athlete fills out their onboarding, questionnaire and you ask them what their strength was, what have you done in the last, well, I haven't, I ran a 5K 3 years ago, and that's about it. But, so I haven't really done much. I'm just kind of starting back again, and then they go down to strengths running, high school, 800 meter. And you're like, dude, that's not how, no, but that's how we think. Like we always get trapped in this. And I don't think it's our ego. I think it's just being naive, right? It's always about what have you done for me lately? It's how quickly you can get back, but also how quickly you can lose it. So when you think about time, you think about seasons and training blocks, I think most of us got into the endurance sports in general because of self-exploration. Like we wanted to figure things out. We want to find out how good we can be. There is no end to that. Like, and that's one of the wonderful things about coaching, and also one of the sometimes kind of dead end street, not unfulfilling part, but knowing as a coach, like you're really never done until an athlete is done. Right? Because an athlete always wants to get better. It doesn't matter what season it is. Like there really is no quote unquote off season. You should always be trying to get better. Yes. Will volume be different? Will intensity be different? Will the focus be different? Yes, always. But the pursuit to get better, no one, like we were joking in the car the other day, no one's ever emailed us and been like, all right, guys, I want you guys to coach me. I want to get worse. Yeah, like, no one's ever said that. I want to be faster. I want to get a PR. I want to be healthier when I'm 50. I want to, do a sub 10 average. Everyone wants something. Want to be faster, want to be fitter, want to be healthier, want to place in their, on their age group, want to run a sub 4 hour marathon, want to break 10 hours in the Ironman, want to qualify for Kona, want to qualify for USAT Nationals, all these things, want to qualify for Boston. Everyone wants more. Like I said, no one's ever like, yeah, I really just kind of want to do this and I never want to race. I just want some structure and accountability. And if I do it, that's fine. Never happens, right? So we're all driven. We all want things. And so it shouldn't be that hard. If you take that personality kind of trait that most athletes have, you can kind of take, that philosophy and that mindset, right? Okay, I always want to get better, right? So if I always want to get better, then what kind of, it doesn't have to be metrics, but what things can I control that are kind of breadcrumbs along the way? Like you want to maintain your appetite, but it's not time for dinner, right? It might be time for a few appetizers here and there, a few, snacks along the way, but the meal is a long way away. And so you kind of have to do some things along the way to, in my opinion, keep you not really entertained, but focused, not on the huge picture, but basically look at the, take the big picture, kind of like a puzzle piece, right? So you have this like, huge portrait of the ocean. That's the puzzle piece you want to put together for your race in like 3 years. Then you break it apart. Okay. And then now what do I need to do to put this puzzle piece together? That way on race day, it's totally done. It's just the way they want it to, and it looks perfect, and it sets myself up for success. That is the way you should do that. I do think that most athletes lose their self along the way because they get distracted, right? So you have to be able to have, finite things that you can focus on. And for self-coached athletes, that's very, very, very hard because, I'm on my journey to, Ironman 2025. I'm like, man, that does not sound fun. Like that's a long way away. It's like taking 2 years to get to Alaska, and you move to different cities, and you live there for a little bit, and you pack up and move on, and you get better and wiser, you save up money, and finally get to wherever it is you want to retire in Alaska versus I'm going to hitchhike until I get there, right? Just kind of see what happens on the way. You have to have that focus and find things that, again, aren't metric related about specifically getting better every week, but things that will lead you to getting better each week. And that I think is something that athletes struggle with is the obsession with, using metrics to fuel their reason for getting better, when on the flip side, what they should do is, like an athlete, I commented on their training piece. I said, listen, man, you solved the puzzle for yourself this last week. Fuel right and get as much sunshine as possible. And if you can do those two things, everything else will take care of itself, right? But we focus on the reverse, which is, maybe going to Ironman Coeur d'Alene in 2 years and finishing. That's not going to get you there, right? That's not, or get you there in the best piece possible.
Yeah, and I think that there's a big difference between being kind of a new person in the sport and being a veteran in the sport in the same situation. For example, if you decide, hey, I want to go do my first Ironman in 2 years. Remember, I still, when we started training together, I mean, it's we've talked about it, but every single day almost I went out there, I was kind of getting a new PR in a way for a long time. It's like very visual. You can kind of like wrap your arms around the progress and everything. And if, you go and do a few Ironman, and then maybe in my situation right now, it seems like every time I'm getting back into it, I'm trying to get back to where I was. So it's not as exciting for one thing. And it seems like a bigger struggle in a lot of ways because like, man, I was here. I don't know. Geez, what am I been doing? And then it's hard to get down on yourself or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I always think about guys like Michael Jordan or whatever, and how he got to be the best, right? I think a lot of us, when we grow up and we're doing sports, maybe when we're a kid, we go out and we're trying to learn how to shoot a basket, right? And when we make it, that's like a big deal. Then how do you get better at making it more often? And then I don't, like in sports like basketball, where there's not as many like clear cut metrics like there is in triathlon that can gauge that you're going faster or getting better. And a guy like Michael Jordan, every year, he used to kind of like figure out, people would tell him what he's not the greatest at or whatever. And the next year he would want to be the greatest at that. Like whether it's driving with his left hand or shooting, or left-handed pullbacks or whatever you want to work on. I mean, there's just like weird little, how do you work on stuff like that? And I think that's kind of the lost art of triathlon sometimes. And it may come down to things like, maybe I need to work on my balance more or little things of strength and just to be able to hold up longer or whatever. I talk about my best 70.3. It wasn't even my fastest race, but I know it was my best shape because I was the strongest throughout and I controlled it the whole time. And how I got there, I don't really remember exactly, except I probably worked pretty hard, but I do think that a lot of times it's, I think it needs to be rounded out a little more. That's where the improvement lies sometimes when you do the little things, whether it's the core work or spending time on, your balance or strength on a weak leg or whatever, or, leading with your weak leg or, we talk about just running. And I think, running a lot obviously is probably the number one thing you can do to get better, to be a better runner in this sport. But there's other things that can go along with it. If you watch, I'm sure a lot of the great runners are doing things like all the time, whether it's, laying on the floor and working on their flexibilities or these types of things. And to me, the difference between the best and the okays comes down to that usually. And I'm sure you probably have examples of that in swimming or, you know, people, I'd say working on drills or whatever, but they're working on weak things and you can't really even, you can't even notice what they're doing, but they're spending hours on things that, and they get off on it.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I'm getting to.
It's the endless pursuit of getting better. Right. And you had a great point about, you know, when you get into the sport, that's why you see a lot of people have the sophomore slump in everything. You're driven, you're pumped, you're focused, you're like, got this. And then they do really, really good. And it's like, yeah, I kind of got it. You know, I got this. Like, so they kind of ease up on things. They maybe aren't getting up as early. They're like more likely to skip things. And then we're like, I've already done it. It's not that big of a deal. And all of a sudden, bam, punched in the mouth, right? You saw what the Kansas City Chiefs is last Sunday. Got a little greedy, got a little confident. And all of a sudden the Cincinnati Bengals came back and punched him in the mouth, right? You can't sit, but it's that endless pursuit of I'm not done, right? Again, go back to their sport. I'm a huge tennis guy, and watching Rafael Nadal come back from down 2 sets to win the Australian Open, that is a guy who literally has no give up and has the pursuit to win at all costs and all effort. He is 110% all the time. No excuses, all effort, get it done. And I would encourage everyone just to kind of watch but tennis, another thing that's so technique driven, just like swimming, the focus and the attention that athletes at the tip top of the world, right, that are the best of the best, the time that they not sacrifice, the time they're willing to invest and to use time management and to allocate time towards what we would look at and think, I don't have time for that, right? Yeah. To get half a second better, right? Or to get off the wall quicker in a turn, right? Or to maybe, because they're you know, track and swimming and, you know, they're thinking about dropping milliseconds, right? In seconds. We go through and we see this huge jump doing the same thing. I don't really need to do that anymore. I kind of done it already, you know? So you wonder why people get stale, right? And they stagnate and they kind of stall out, and their progression is, another thing is you can't always do what you've always done and expect the same result. Yes, there are certain things that, you know, that should be a standard of your training and a progression, but you can't, that's not like the ends of the pursuit isn't the end of a season. It's not the end of a race either. It's all a building block. When you look back at, you know, like, and I'll readily admit this as an athlete, like if I had strung together like 10 straight years of, and, you know, like the best training I've ever had, and I basically just multiplied it by 7, and I'm in like the freaking ridiculous shape right now, but I haven't, right? But that's, you know, that's life. But at the same time, if you want to be better, it's about stringing it all together. It's about being continuous with it all. It's not about, you know, being really, really, really good and then falling off the face of the earth for 5 months and then expecting, just because you did it the previous year, to do it again, right? And I think we really, really underestimate the unpredictability and honestly, the fact of getting older, right? Yeah. In that 3 years, especially once you hit, in my opinion, once you hit like 45, the years start to actually really kind of matter in terms of how much harder it is to maintain a certain amount of shape, and then how much longer it takes you to get it back, right? So the longer and this is true with all athletes that I work with, that 45 to 50 range, that's when you start seeing layoffs take longer to get back. And that's that's why most athletes have to maintain some level of continuity in their seasons. Not because they are driven to do it year round, but because they're afraid of what's going to happen when they don't. Because that's going to be.
Did you just give me an excuse?
No, I gave me an excuse. That was me telling you to get your shit together and get back in the game. You don't want to lose it.
Well, come on, man.
Ironman Chattanooga was not that long ago. But to say
harder,
that,
man.
But to put it in that breath is like, Ironman Chattanooga for you probably seems like 5 years ago.
Yeah, it does.
Right? But it's like, you know, end of October, November, December, it's 4 months ago, right?
I know.
Which is a while. It's a third of a year, but it wasn't 5 years ago, right? But to think about the time it took you to get ready for that, the time to get ready for, you know, the next one you have coming down the pipe, it's just one of those things where I think we also, and I think hopefully the last 3 years has taught us this, is that your pursuit and your ability to turn the switch on is always going to change. Some years, flipping that switch, it'll be easy. Life's easy, stress is down, everything's falling into place. Boom, switch, gone. See you later. The next year, flipping that switch, you might short the breaker, right? You might go to flip the switch and you got nothing there. Motivation is gone. Time is stressful, family, work, whatever it is. We just can't flip the switch. Like you see that oftentimes in professional sports, and they talk about some of the best teams where they just kind of fall back and they just think, we got all the talent in the world. We've done it before. We can just flip the switch and we'll be right back. It's like they have this almost irresponsible level of kind of just blase calm. They're like, we got it. We can do this. Yeah. And then they get punched in the mouth. And when they try to get it back, they can't get it back.
Can't get it back.
You can't assume you're going to get it back. That's why I drive it so much into the athletes that we work with. It's like, not be aggressive, but hold yourself accountable and be offensive with the time that you have that you're given. Don't just assume you're going to have it next week, because that's a huge frustration you see with athletes. Like, I planned on getting it back this week and life's kicking me in the nuts and I can't do anything. And like, the last four weeks, life was perfect for you and you could barely get off the couch. Mm-hmm. So don't be mad at life. Be mad at yourself for choosing to do nothing the last 4 weeks when life was basically handing you cupcakes and cookies, and now it's punching you in the mouth with a crowbar. Don't blame it on life. Blame it on the 4 weeks you just wasted. And you see that so much, especially like when February, March, April hits, because people take off and have this excuse of being lazy in January and February because the season's coming up and I got plenty of time. And you're like, well, really? Do you know what's going to happen in March, April, and May to your life? Good, because I don't either. So you better get to work now, because it's called hedging your bet. It's called preparing, because what do you want to do? Because it's such in athletes and people will always have this entitlement, I think, to time. Well, I've got plenty of time. It's the season even started yet. Like, who says your life isn't going to go to shit in 2 months when you're ready to finally get rock and rolling? Then you know what you're being bad at? Life. When you should be mad at yourself because you had 2 months to get rock and roll. Don't let stuff like this go by. I'm not telling you to be so focused on training and to put everything else on it. What I'm telling you is to stop wasting your time. I'm telling you to get to work. I'm telling you, like, the time. Like, we had a podcast a few weeks ago that we had a lot of good feedback was do it right now, right? Be proactive. Take the bull by the horns and get to work. I just think we just assume that this time is going to happen and we're going to get it. And you're getting lost in, again, that entitlement of, we think life is going to just basically, part like the Red Sea for us and let us walk up to the Ironman start line in the best shape of our life with no sickness and no obstacles and no nothing. And here we go, because you know what? I wanted to spend $775 on this registration fee. But you know what? Life is going to just roll out the red carpet and it's going to be like the Oscars. Well, guess what, folks? Life doesn't work like that. So if that's something that you want to do, heck, get after it, right? It's the giant view of the small thing we do, which is we don't give a day off in the week, usually, like very rare, unless it's like a down week or something else is coming up or you're racing. You don't give days off. Why? Because we don't really dictate days off. Guess what? Life does. You do, right? So if I give you a day off on a Monday because I'm too lazy to do anything else, and I don't really want to look at your training over the weekend as another coach, and then guess what? You take Monday off. Guess what? You now have to go 6 for 6. You got to go 6 for 6. If you want the rest of your week to get 6 weeks, you got to go perfect the rest of the week. Do you understand the stress that puts on athletes? I honestly don't understand. Like, I have never wrapped my brain around the laziness that is the Monday day off. Really? Why? Because guess what? Now you got to be perfect the rest of the week. Guess what? Tuesday happens. You're like, here we go. Nailed it. Wednesday happens. Crap. Late work meeting. My kid's basketball game got rescheduled. Now I'm at one workout. I'm 3 days in the week now, 1 and 2. Next day is a lot of pressure. I got to move it and stack it. And then next thing you know what you're doing? All right. Next Tuesday be better. Next Tuesday be better. Don't let life dictate when the days off need to happen so you can take them, not when they're given. And I think that's one of like the mindset that people have to have. And I had a comment, another newer athlete who was like, I was really, really happy that I chose to cut this workout short Saturday. Really happy I did that. And I made that choice because the next day my run was outstanding. And I was really happy I was able to make that decision to not sacrifice the rest of the weekend for one thing. Make the choice yourself, right? And like, don't wait for life to make the decisions for you. You make it yourself, and at least put yourself in the best position. So when life does kick in the balls and want to put you on, you're like, you know what? I got a cup on. I can handle this. Let's move on. Let's move right on with things.
Mm-hmm. On that Monday day off thing is interesting because a lot of times, obviously, it's coming off of your biggest 2 days in a row, and man, that's just like, to me, that's part of triathlon is getting back on the horse right then, because that's the day that, you might not feel the best or whatever, and you got to flush it out. And that's like a process that we sort of ignore sometimes, I think. And then it becomes about momentum, right? Because trust me, I know right now, it's the more days you take off, the harder it gets to go back. And if you're taking a day off that you don't need, then it becomes even harder. So, back to your thing about the football players or the athletes that get punched in the mouth because they think they got it all lined up and things are going good. They got all the athletes or whatever. I have a theory on that. It's the more often I see an athlete's face on TV in a commercial, the more I know that they're going down the wrong path. And it just sort of pays off. It seems like every year when somebody gets hot, they get a bunch of commercials.
I think there were 9 Patrick Mahomes commercials on after he choked.
Dear God. Yeah. It's
epically choked.
Yeah. It's like they loaded up. Yeah, he's going to win it or whatever. And like Aaron Rodgers, same thing. It's
on
like,
him a nickname. He was Patrick Mahomeless.
Mahomeless. So, but yeah, I don't know, man. It's just, it really does. It gets to be difficult sometimes to keep it going or whatever, but man, it gets almost more difficult if you're not going.
That should be the title of the podcast. Like, no, it's like, it is. It's that, like, even just doing something like 30 minutes a day, like there's these people in our neighborhood and we have some pretty good athletes in our neighborhood that are generally pretty awesome and pretty fit. But there's just 3 people that every day I see them walking the exact same time. And I have the utmost respect because their routine, they get up, they get it done, no matter what, it gets done. Because I feel like that mentality is because I know the day that I don't, the day is going to turn into 2. The day is going to turn into 3. It's always easier when we're doing it, right? Than when we're not doing it. That's why, and I do think that's why, like, yes, streaks are made to be broken, records made to be broken. I think that's why people hold on so tight to streaks because they also know intrinsically what happens when it's broken. Mm-hmm. That they feel like there's a little luster off the top. Like, it's kind of, well, it's not that good. Here I go. I got to start over again. Dude, life is one big long freaking streak. Okay, it's not like you are a sum of of all of life. It's not about, well, when they sit down at, hope to God, when I die one day at my funeral, they're not going to judge me on like the worst 3 years of my life. And that streak, they're going to judge me on my life as a whole. Like, well, you know what, today, Robbie's, lies here, and let's go back and let's dissect these 3 years of his life, and that's what we're going to pay, tribute today. I'm like, hell, they better. If that's going to happen, y'all just cremate me and toss me in the lake. Man. Oh, really? Now, yeah. No, and you probably will live like you're 117. It's everything, right? It's everything combined, right? And like going back to, that was seriously the only reason why other things, but like why Nadal won the Australian Open. He's been at it for 20 years. Basically, didn't even know he was going to play in this tournament, been injured, had surgery, didn't even know he was going to play like a month out, goes in and comes back and beats one of the top players in the world to now hold like the record and tie for the most Grand Slams ever. He's done it. It wasn't some new kid coming off the street. He was one of the greatest tennis players of all time. It's what he's done over this whole body of work, and that's what we have, right? That's what our life is. It's about your body of work. That's what training is. It's about a body of work. Yes, the streaks are great and they improve your ability and what's going to be in your body of work of training when you lead to race day, but those are made to be broken. Pick it back up and move again. Like you can't adhere. And also I don't think you can be afraid of what's going to happen when the streak ends, right? You got to embrace and think, all right, streaks are made to be broken. Records made to be broken. Let's get back to work, right? Let's take, because what happens is most athletes take their inability to get that day done, like, oh, my streak's broken, and that's what they think about. Instead of, okay, I've never had a streak like this in my life, right? I've never been this fit in my life. I've never been able to be this consistent, this motivated, and this good at time management in my life. What did I learn about myself in these last 3 weeks that I can now use for the next 3 weeks to make me do it again, right? We always worry and obsess about what we didn't do versus, okay, all right, well, like I have athletes that literally miss one 20-minute set, like 20-minute run during the week. The rest of the week is absolute perfection. Sunday comments. Yeah, pretty disappointed I wasn't able to get in that. I'm like, oh my God, shut your mouth. Like, you missed a 20-minute, like, can we not, like, celebrate the fact that you probably did more cardio than 99% of the people on this planet did. You got your work and you missed one 20-minute run because, you overslept because you're up late, last night at a travel hockey game. Big effing whoop. Like, honestly, I'm glad you missed it, right? You probably needed the sleep to make sure you got the rest of the week the way you needed to. Take the good stuff. Take what you learn from that, because that's what's going to produce the longevity you need. Like, all right, how did I get up earlier? Did I pay more attention to my sleep? Did I listen to my body? Did I cut phone time? Did I go to bed earlier? Did I eat right? And that's how I was feeling better. So I wanted to get up earlier. Like, all these things are connected. So instead of looking at the things you don't do right or how far away something is, look at what you're doing right now. And then don't try to just, flip the script or multiply it by 10. Just try to do it maybe a little bit better the next day. Or if it's working really, really, really well, then don't touch it, right? Like, don't try to just do something new. Don't touch it. Like, like that old infomercial that was so popular. Set it and forget it. Just like stick with it. Learn, take those small things, not just about the fitness you're gaining, but about the habits, maybe even the boundaries, the time management, whatever it is. Take those and let those move you on to the next one to help you get better.
Mm. We get tied to the streak though, right? So whether it's that run streak or whatever the streak is, we think about what we're doing in terms of that streak instead of like, okay, so what happens when it does end? It's like, well, I need another streak. Or do we need, like, I just think that at some point, if you're, say you're going to go try and run for 50 straight days or something like that, or you want a streak like that. And I think it's fine. It's great and everything, but are you just, I think at the essence of it all, you have to kind of figure out what you're doing on each individual day, to get better. Because if you can't get your mind in that place, then you're tied to the streak, or you're tied to the race time, or you're tied to the number of this or whatever, instead of the things you really need to kind of get your head into to get better. And, just an example, like I've been struggling to train. I'll admit it. I mean, it's no secret, but like I got on the bike Saturday and
Sunday, right?
Well,
I saw the towel on the bike.
Yeah, the towel was
there. I was in here Saturday and I saw the towel on the bike yesterday. Okay.
But I got on there and worked on my zone 1 because I think, because I'm like in my head, I'm like, maybe I get into these things and I have a tendency to push. I come from sports that are a little bit more short and explosive, and I have this tendency to always ride a little hard or run a little hard, and whatever the case may be. And I was like, and I've been, a little sore and a little bit, wanky and not really into the mood. So I was like, today, I really think I need to practice on going slower, and that, how weird is that? And how ridiculously boring is that? But when we talk about, building our chassis and our aerobic capacity and things like that, maybe, that's something that how can I get excited about that? That's what I keep thinking, is like, man, this is exciting. I'm not even breathing hard. But I'm serious. I was kind of trying to get in that mindset, because it's always, for me, it's always going back to a kid, and I love that you bring Hayden into the conversation, because when I was a kid, I would just sit around for hours and try to figure out how to hit the right angle off the bounce of some tabletop game or something like that, and really like get good at it. And I didn't have, YouTube videos to show me or anything like that, but there was something so pure and so exciting about the passion to figure that out. And I think a lot of times that, there can be YouTube videos for anything, but if we can't figure it out for ourselves, for our own body, and understand our own body and the way we feel and what's working and what's not, then we can't really figure it out. And I think it's also more exciting when we kind of go, aha, that is what I need. I need to pedal real easy.
The aha, you said a lot there that I love, and I think I can even like try and like nail it down to a few titles and we can close it. It's like, it's not about the focus shouldn't be on keeping the streak, right? Which most people's focus is. It's like a strain. All right, what do I gotta do to keep it? Mm-hmm. The focus should be on what's allowing you to streak. Mm-hmm. Because for some people it's their why. Like they find the new why, or they find the new reason, or they find the new, attachment to training, which is like, maybe like your zone one. This is going to get me into a groove and a process oriented, whatever it is. Don't make the focus so much about, keeping the streak, because then it becomes about, again, it's just a number, right? Because then it's broken. What are you going to do? You can't keep the streak anymore. What the focus needs to be on is what is allowing me to streak? Why am I streaking, right now? Because that's the stuff you can use to keep you, because it's not about missing a day, it's about taking a day, right? And then you move on and you make another one. It's about making everything continuous and moving on through the progression of the season, and then through hopefully multiple seasons. So I think if you're that person who's like, or if you find that magical, not streak, but that magical like internal desire, that's not not you're looking for like outside motivation. It's just like you're in the zone. Like best zones I've ever been in, they've been intrinsic. They've just want to get better today. That's it. And I won't miss. And I get and obviously what happens? I get in the best shape of my life. And then you kind of lose your way, and then it's kind of hard to get back. Even if you know what the feeling is, you can't create it. And I think that's something that's really hard. So when I hear athletes say, I just can't get motivated, I can't find the time, I don't want to do this. It's not so much about the motivation piece. It's like you haven't really figured out what's going to get your juices flowing to make it matter, right? Because a lot of times motivation is always about what matters to you. Find something that matters to you. Your zone one might matter, right? So because right now, especially this time of year, it's like find something that matters. And it can be small, it can be large, but find something that matters, because that's, again, not tied to a race or a finish line or whatever it is. Just find something small that matters. And usually it's something emotional or mental. It's picturing, crossing the finish line, with your kid being there, or it's, going back to a race that has special meaning to you, or your family coming to watch, or, doing an Ironman at age 50 or age, whatever it is. Like those kind of emotional, mental attachments allow you to make the time and give you a different kind of purpose to what you're doing, because it no longer becomes about the physical output and the fitness gains. It becomes about this journey, right? Your self-exploration you're on, like going back to what we talked about earlier. And that's what obviously, leads you down, the promised land and the path of just getting better. And then when you have that day, the day you wanted or had some special meaning to you, it's going to be even more special, because you're probably going to be in the best place you've ever been for it. Fitness, you're physically, emotionally, and mentally. So especially like for all of you, like if you're out there struggling and trying to figure out what makes me tick, what matters to me, or it can't be just a race and a time. Like very, very few people can be driven like that. Most people, it's, that's the very few, right? The ones I'm just driven, like the Kobe's and the Michael Jordans, and like those guys, I'm just driven to just like, eat people for lunch and be my best. Like they're up at 4:00 every day and they're already the best on the planet. Most people ain't wired like that. Like we got, then there's nothing wrong with needing a little something extra. Right. Mm-hmm. But it's finding what matters. It doesn't have to be some like, crazy thing or that's super emotional, but just find out what matters to you and then stick with it and make that your focus, not the streaks and not the time goals, but what really, really, really matters to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really tough thing, man, to be driven on that level. I think like the best of the best, but they still have, because when he comes back, Jordan or Kobe says, I'm going to win. His streak is championships. Think about the variables that go into that. He's not just saying, I got to get faster at getting from, a rebound and get down the court in, 2.6 seconds mm-hmm. versus 2.7. There's a million variables in there. It's like, he's talking about, bringing his team together, making guys work better,
and that's the standard in which you will forever be.
So how do you train for that? You know what I mean?
And that's like, it is like, but once you verbalize it, that is the standard in which you have now going to be judged on, not just from yourself, but for everyone else, right? Oh, he said he wanted to do this, so now he's going to be judged by, when Brady left the Patriots, like, I want to go win a Super Bowl with somebody else. If he hadn't, he'd been judged on the fact that he couldn't, right? So, but that's not what he, drove him to, get better. No, it's because he was probably anal retentive about, making sure his pinky is lined up just at the right angle every time he gets the ball read, and how quickly he can get rid of the football, right? Those things, it's like the small details that make you that give you the best shot to attain the ultimate goal, right? Which is maybe being the best or getting to the finish line X amount of time, but that's the thing, like, you can't control who shows up or what day you have, right? Like, and I'll use like one last tennis analogy because most people hate tennis, but the insanity that it is that there are 3 guys now that hold the most Grand Slams ever. 3 guys that came in the same era, right? If just 2 of them, if one of them weren't around, the other 2 guys would have close to 30, right? Like, even more. So there's just so many things in life. And so to think about, what if that was their only goal, right? And they would consider themselves a failure, but instead you grew up and you became a professional tennis player, literally the greatest male history ever of men's champions, and you all just happen to come in the same exact time, and that they'd be, I guess it wasn't good enough. Like, I'm a failure. I'm like, are you serious right now? So it's just, there's so, like you said, there's so many things you can't control, but there are also so many things you can, right? And that's going back to something we always say, and we said a lot in our podcast, is control the controllables, and the other stuff, you just kind of leave it to be, and we'll leave you to be. For the rest of your week, we're enjoying ourselves at Run Camp.
Yeah, we are.
You got if you want to join the club, you better hop in and beg Professor Tirali to let you back in for the rest of the semester. And you can learn more all about that and everything else that we do at our website, C26Triathlon.com. It is our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. Check out the club tab and ask Mike for permission to come to class. And then if you want more info on what coaching looks like for us, you can hop over to the coaching tab and look at our roster of coaches. And then, as always, if you need anything from Mike specifically, he's at crushingiron@gmail.com. If you need anything from me, you can get a hold of me at C26coach@gmail.com.
Okay, Coach, back to the running.
Back to the running.